problem, man. Hey guys, first off, like I said, thank you guys for being here. This is a new venture for me, and of course, one of the biggest challenges has been actually finding guests that want to come on and kind of take a stab in the dark. And I've had like nothing to really show anyone other than a pitch. So it's really amazing that you guys have taken the time out of your days to come on in and have a kōrero about the kaupapa that you guys are doing out there in the community, with a lot of brothers out there that are going through some real intense trauma in their lives. So I guess I'll just quickly start off with a bit of a background on you guys. So Simon, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no worries. Nō te waipuna mua hau, nō mā wheranui a hau, ko ara ki te maunga, ko waimakere te awa, ko te tauranga waka a mau i te marae. Engari, e nai nei, e noho ana a hau ki a Tamaki Makaurau, ko te tangata o te tiriti toku iwi. So I'm Simon, I'm turning 50 tomorrow actually, my birthday tomorrow.
Cool, Well happy birthday Simon.
Thanks.
Sure.
I'm married, I've got 4 kids. 15 is my eldest son, and I've got a 12-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old daughter. My 3-year-old daughter has Down syndrome, so that's kind of interesting.
Wow, okay.
And I've been doing this mahi with Better Blokes for just a couple of years now, and kind of came to it out of my own lived experience and finding therapy, counselling, peer support, getting alongside other guys, really helpful for me in my own journey of well-being. So that's kind of a bit of background to who I am.
Wow.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because, that's the first time I've heard it, so wow, thank you. Also, can I just quickly say, sorry, before we get on to you, John, pai tō reo.
Oh, kia ora.
Wow, pai tō reo. He Māori koe?
No, te tangata o te riri a hau,
Kia ora. Oh.
I used to say ko Ngāti Pākehā a hau, but I don't think that goes down well anymore, so I don't
Okay, no, fair enough. Wow. No, I was really blown away. Like, I knew you spoke a little bit of te reo, but I was like, oh my goodness. John, please, introduce yourself. E hoa?
Yeah, first, I think I just want to express gratitude for having us here. I think any sort of avenue where we can get the message out about supporting men and some of the stuff that men go through is really positive and good for our cause. So my own background is coming from sort of a space of addiction and sort of mental health. And I sort of came through Better Blokes as a recipient of support to begin with. So I think the term is sort of lived experience. And I've just found that it's through the support that I've received through other men who have been through similar things has been really instrumental to my own recovery. And I'm also a father, work with Better Blokes, do some other stuff around suicide prevention.
Cool.
And happy to be here. Thanks.
Wow. Incredible, guys. Wow. I'm a little bit speechless. I know that we had a kōrero earlier, and now I feel like I've actually properly met you guys for the first time. That's really beautiful what you guys are doing, and to actually, show up in front of cameras and share your guys' story and the mahi you guys do. So, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you very much. If you could, I know you briefly described it before, Simon. In depth, what is the mission? What is Better Blokes' mission? What is the mission of Better Blokes, or for Better Blokes, I should say?
Yeah, good question. We're actually discussing this kind of thing at a group of all the guys that work for us just last weekend. We were looking, at our values organisationally and what do we do? What's the mahi? Why do we do what we do? And I suppose one of the things that came through when we were doing that was that I think we kind of want to help men to be all that they can be, become all that they can become. And that's in a whole range of different areas. We think about spiritually, we think about emotionally, we think about psychologically, just become all that they can be. And I suppose you could see that frame that as becoming well. a wellness framework, or healing. You might like to use healing,
Yeah,
but just
yeah.
becoming a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean we're all going to go on to greatness.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has their own kaupapa, their own journey, their own story. But just so long as each man that comes is aware that they can become a bit better, that would be a win for us, I suppose. And it's encouraging to see, we might go on to it later, that does often happen for many of these guys. So.
Oh, hard out, definitely.
Yep.
And for you, John, going through the actual, so just to lay it out, so you guys have a 24-week program, is that correct? So did you go through this 24-week program? I guess we'll elaborate on this a little bit. Sorry, that's my bad for kind of pointing that out first. But yeah, so for your journey, coming from addiction, you went through the program?
Yeah, I think one of the guys, Dave Passel, who really championed and set up Better Blokes, was a firm believer in just getting men to sit and open up and talk about stuff to one another. As we're sort of talking about earlier, for men it's not a natural thing.
No.
And so his idea was that men getting together and talking about things will be able to solve whatever issues that we're facing. And yeah, that was my journey, just coming in and sitting in with the group, meeting like-minded individuals, talking about things that we'd been through, experiences, issues, challenges, and really addressing this sort of sense of shame I think that a lot of men have when they become isolated and they don't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess the journey I can sort of liken to being able to sort of feel comfortable in my own skin, talking, connecting, moving from that place of isolation, and ultimately sort of being weller, if that's a right way of saying it. But that's not to say I haven't had a lot of bumps along the way, but I've made it this far. So
congratulations, John. Congratulations for overcoming and emerging and becoming the man you are now. That's awesome. And like you say, one of I think for a lot of men, we kind of briefly brushed over this earlier in regards to healing and how there is a big difference for men and women when it comes to dealing with trauma or even kind of services for men and women to deal with their trauma. And someone was saying, I can't reference who it was, but it was along the lines of, for women, it's therapy seems to work a lot better for women, but with men, it seems that brotherhood and coaching seems to work a lot better for men too. And have you guys noticed that in your service? Because clearly you guys are not therapists as such, but you are a peer support group. So have you noticed that in your services?
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, it is difficult for guys to come and talk about things.
Yeah.
And I would say, culturally we are conditioned not to talk about these things. When I was growing up, as I said, I'm nearly 50, but it was kind of rugby, racing and beer. It might not be those three things now, but there is that whole idea of toughing it out, hardening up and getting on with it. And in a sense, what we're doing here tonight, what we're doing in our service, both one-on-one and in groups, is critiquing that cultural norm. We are saying it is okay to come together. It is okay to recognise your own emotions. It is okay to talk about those things. And in doing so, you may well find yourself becoming more whole.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know whether you've noticed this, John, but the word that comes up often with guys that I talk to, either one-on-one or in group situations, is they go away after having a bit of a cordial for an hour with me or a couple of hours in a group saying, hey, I feel a bit better.
Wow.
I feel lighter. The word is lighter. They often say lighter.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
okay.
so there's something
wow.
in that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like, oh, why are all these guys saying lighter? I'm not feeding them that. That's just, and so there's something in that experience. Obviously, just talking out your story, just keep on, you know, korero mai ki aho, you know, just they keep on, and it seems to work. So that's a thing that seems to be really valuable for the guys getting together and sharing their stories.
Literally carrying a burden. Like, you know, it might be a metaphor, but I mean, it kind of carries through to the physical side of one's holder as well. You know, yeah. I mean, was that the same for you, John? You know, when you first came into, or you know, first found Better Blokes and had your first kōrero, did you feel like there was a bit of a weight that was lifted off you, or were you a bit reluctant at first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe that when I came to the group, I witnessed other men sharing deeply about stuff, and it's sort of a little bit refreshing, you know. Out there in the community, there's a lot of banter and talk about all sorts of things, but guys are really talking about things that were mattered to them and things that were really important about their life and stuff.
Yeah.
So I felt quite comfortable quickly to open up and share stuff. And yeah, there's a real sense of trust within that space. I know for the approach, the peer sort of based approach of Better Blokes is really about acknowledging the man that we're dealing with as the expert.
Yep.
And so what we're really doing is just providing them space and being a sounding board. And I really feel that honours the person. And often with some of the other types of therapy can be, there's a bit of a power dynamic in there.
Totally.
And so what we're sort of saying is, okay guys, we believe you have the answer, you're the expert, you know your story, your life more than we do. But look, we're here to support you to help find the answers to whatever it is that you're looking for.
Yeah. And do you think that, and how you're saying there's that power, like bit of a power struggle with therapists, is also, I don't know, I feel like, is there potentially like some kind of like, how do I find the word, like, not intellectual snobbery, but do you think they kind of speak to you from like as if they're way up here and they're speaking down and like saying, well, when I read these books and done all this research, you know, what you're feeling is this, that, and that, and then the person, you know, if they're talking to you, you're kind of like, no, that's not actually it, but then they're going, no, that is it, because I've researched it, I've studied it, and you know, and kind of very.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there can be. I mean, I wouldn't want to, you know, speak to individual therapists and how they might or might not operate. But I think that power imbalance is definitely there, and it's interesting. I can be there, not with all therapists, but with some.
No, absolutely.
And I think often peer support work, lived experience work, works very well alongside clinical experience as well. Interestingly, we did a bit of research in the organisation last year. We asked 11 previous clients some of the reasons they came into our service, and many of them, I think it was 8 or 9 out of the 11, said that they felt that they had got as far as they could go with clinical services or with professional services. Some of that was CADS, some of that was therapy, and they didn't exactly say, I felt disempowered or I felt that the therapist was lording it over me. They didn't say anything like that. But what they did say, when they came into Better Blokes, they felt understood. Why did they feel understood? Because you have been through something similar to me.
Yeah.
And not all models of therapy, but most models of one-to-one talk support have the therapist not saying very much at all. Not letting a whole lot out about their own story, their own kōrero. They're simply there to listen and reflect the client's story. But we, in peer support, lived experience work, we come alongside and appropriately, in a limited sense, tell a bit about our story when we think it would help the client who's
gets
with
them
us.
to open up.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's also an amazing opportunity not only for them to get the help they need, but you also might even have the opportunity to learn something new about yourself as well through people that have gone through the same journey as you. Would I be correct there?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes we meet with men have never talked about stuff before, and you might be the first person that they've made certain disclosures to. So it's real honouring to be a part of their journey. Yeah. And, you know, often we've seen men, you know, watch them develop over time of engaging with our service, and it's like, it's really rewarding. Yeah. And so one of our leaders, he sort of says this thing about recovery, you only get to keep what you give away. And I think it's part of that journey of staying well ourselves, is giving back to a certain degree and staying connected to our roots, or where we come from, if you like.
Hard out. There's so many things I want to ask you, but as soon as you said the word roots, I thought, you know, I mean, is a lot of the people that come and see you, a lot of them Māori? Like, is there, I don't want to put it down to race or anything, but is there a common pattern where you see a lot more Māori or Pacific Island or you know, Pākehā people or anything like that? And if so, if it is, sorry, if I might just say, if the biggest demographic is Māori or Pacific Pacific Islanders, sorry, Polynesian, is that, do you think a lot of them are quite disconnected from their culture? In general, do you think a lot of them are quite disconnected culturally?
Yeah, I think there's some certain cultural nuances around Pacifica and Māori, which probably tends to inhibit them from reaching out. Traditionally, they haven't really been accommodated by mainstream health services. So there's that sort of level of distrust. But you know, we're really making specific efforts to reach out in those areas, and we're building relationships, and what we're finding is that we are getting more Māori and Pacifica reaching out, and it's working. So it's kind of sad to hear that, but it's also beautiful to hear that too, that there are a lot of our people that are willing to seek help and better themselves. And what a perfect name for your organisation, by the way, Better Blokes. You know, it's a cool name. So definitely, because I mean that's I mean I've met a lot of people that have had, you know, some real bad things happen to them in their past, and a lot of traumas. You know, a lot of them, I've got a lot of friends that are in the gangs, you know, and you know, common trend with them, of course, is, you know, being, you know, sadly, unfortunately, abused and sexually abused. I have a few mates that have gone through, well, you know, they're, when I say mates, they're a lot older than me, you know, in their 40s and 50s, so a lot of them went through the, as they called it back then, before Oranga Tamariki, SIFs, and then it was social welfare, you know, who went through that system and went through that systemic abuse and all that, you know, and sorry, I'm just kind of getting lost in that because it's, wow. Can I just mention, I think you've touched on something quite important, and I believe that's why sort of with the clinical model, it doesn't work for a lot of guys, particularly, you know, gone through the system. If abuse has occurred at a young age, so they're being probably acting out at school, told off, and then maybe engagement with police, and then courts, lawyers, and all the rest of it. So there's that real sort of feeling of being misunderstood. And they've never had an opportunity to say, hey, what was your life like? Tell us about your story. And so really that's what we're giving them the opportunity to do. And it's amazing. You see men who have been through some really rough journeys. And on the face of it, you might think, oh, you know, that they sort of may not be in a great way. But if you see their strength that they've exhibited to get to where they're at, and so there's always a lot to work with there. And so Yeah, that's another rewarding part of the journey, I feel.
Yeah.
I was just reflecting on the, your question about are Māori more highly represented in our service?
Yeah.
As John said, I think we're seeing growing numbers of Māori and Pacifica, completely different I know, but coming into our service. We've actually just got some funding granted for the South Auckland area where
Cool.
Māori and Pacifica are more highly represented down there, so we're very pleased about that. I think it's interesting to think through, and we've noticed this particularly in Pacifica context, that whole idea of shame, and I suppose within a Māori context, whakamā. And many Pacifica, as we know, are fully linked into their church.
Yeah.
However, our Pacifica representative, Pautoa Papalihi, who was invited to be here
Yeah.
today, but he's actually leading a group tonight, so he's continuing with the mahi.
Good on you, Pautoa.
Yeah. Like he's fully integrated into the church himself, but he's tried to, I suppose, help integrate our services into the church in South Auckland, but found quite a bit of resistance, not always.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't done it myself, don't want to be speaking for him, but
Yeah.
often when you bring up the whole idea of sexual abuse, sexual offenders, even just sex, sometimes within that context,
Yeah.
don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting. Poe and Linda and John and a couple of others to a lesser extent have helped develop the Pacifica Leadership Program down there.
Cool.
They're calling it a leadership program,
Okay.
with the main motive being voyages out from the islands to New Zealand on the Waka, continuing on your journey of leadership and growth and discovery. So
Yeah.
instead of being a shame-based whakamā, sex, sexual abuse, turn it upside down a bit.
Yeah.
Within the context there to say, you are strong, you're a leader, you have come through, even though it's difficult, you
Yeah.
have coped, and we're going to help you continue to think about how you can cope into the future. So it's just an interesting cultural nuance that we're finding, we're thinking about how to do that more effectively, I suppose.
Beautiful. Because I mean, you look at, I don't want to keep bringing gangs up, but gangs are a fine example of it, and this isn't demonising gang members or anything like that, but they're a fine example, especially in certain individuals, of a man that's holding on to pain and doesn't know what to do with it, and, in his heart and in his soul feels like, and in his mind as well, feels like he has been fully betrayed by all these people that were meant to help him, and, like as if life at home wasn't already shit, and then now he's got to go out there into the big world, and there's all these services going, oh, we'll help you, and then they too, abusing him. So it's like, well, what other option is there? Like, home is shit, society's shit. You know what? Up yours. I'm give me a patch, bruv. Let's go. And. And they're carrying so much pain, man, so much pain. And I grew up in Gisborne. I was about to say in the streets of Gisborne, but I grew up in the hood, so I've seen it. And you used to have mob in one end of the street, black power at the other end. So in the 90s, it was an interesting dynamic. Growing up, and there's all these hurt men walking around hurting each other. Tattooing love and hate on their fists and spreading it, and that's I finally got that because I saw an ad. I'll just cut in here and just say I saw an ad a few years back, and there's a guy talking about, and I've seen so many gang members and hard asses with the love hate, and this guy said, I used to tattoo love and hate on my fists because I was trying to go around punching everyone up, trying to spread as much of it as I could. I was like, damn. Oh, damn. And yeah, when they said that to me, not to me, but when I saw that, it just made so much sense to me, and that from that day forward, like I just saw that lifestyle completely just differently, and understood, because I've been through shit in my life, not as heavy as what some of the brothers that you guys see or work with have gone through, but even for me, I've felt like at certain points in my life I felt like this was love and this was hate, and I've had a few moments where I've been out there and I've spread the love and the hate, and I'm glad that I've dealt with that side of me. But I know that guy is still in there. He's still hanging out. Yeah, I might be softly spoken and all that, but I'm still. You can take the boy out of the hood, but you can't take the.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I'm
Take
thinking
the hood
about
out of me.
interesting what you said about the gangs. Like I think you said a place to work out your trauma. In a sense, a place to belong and work out your trauma.
Or where your trauma is accepted, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's like, you're like me. You're pissed off too, right?
We're all in this together. Yeah. It's interesting, eh? And then I think, Better Blokes, I like to think of it, as also a place to belong, and a place to work out your trauma, a place to be accepted. So all of those things, It's really quite interesting. I was thinking today too. I've been doing a bit of reading about trauma recently, as you do.
Yeah, totally.
And that whole, love, hate. We were talking a bit before about males and females getting together and doing their kōrero differently. Guys aren't really open to it. Women perhaps are. Generalisation, I know. But maybe we are, part of what we're doing is helping guys to become more balanced men.
Yeah.
Learning to do that whole emotional thing. If we think back historically, the women's movement, in the last 30 or 40 years, women's liberation, finding your voice, I can do everything. What was the slogan when I was growing up? Women can do anything. And yes, they can. And they've learned to do that. They've learned to be strong. They've learned to take charge. They've learned to get out in the workforce. Great.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for men to start to learn, I can be softer. I can be quieter.
Yeah.
I can connect with my emotions.
Yeah.
Women have balanced up the disparity of their lack of power and injustice.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for men to start coming down a few notches and integrate more fully and become more who they are as well as we come together. Oh, I'm dreaming big dreams here on Fred Porkway's podcast.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's a beautiful world, right? But it's not the reality that we live in.
True.
And we briefly went over it earlier, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I think there's a lot of things in society that it's not doing anyone any favours. And I'm gonna go there. It's all right. This ain't gonna fall on you guys what I'm about to say, but the masculinization of women and the feminisation of men is at an all-time high, and it has created a complete and utter imbalance, and it's led to men being more miserable, and it has led to women being more miserable, to the point where it's ruining the family. We're getting told by society, I don't know who's creating these rules, but we get men are being told by society, oh, you need to be softer. And this isn't having a go at what you just said, because I think it's beautiful what you said, but from a societal point of view, men are being told, oh, you should be more emotional and be softer and all that. But what's happening is it's making men weaker and more emotional, to the point where they start to lose their sense of control and stoicism and leadership, and then women are having to pick up their slack to keep things going. And it's like I said, it's all leading into this big imbalance where women are now starting to play the traditional man's role, and men are starting to fall into the traditional woman's role. And I'm open for progressive thinking and all that, but at the end of the day, we're still humans, we're still biological beings, and we still hurt, but we definitely have our ways of healing and going through, and like I said earlier, for men is definitely, there's a brotherhood. Men need that strong brotherhood, men work better when they get coached more than more than, you know, sitting there with a therapist and kind of getting psychoanalyzed. And it's like, I feel like personally for me, for my healing and for me to get over my traumas, I needed someone that was going to be a fatherly figure to me. I still have my dad. I love you, Dad. Don't get me wrong. You know, but I needed, when my dad wasn't there, when I was living, you know, in Wellington and South Island, I needed a guy that was just that person to go, come on, bro, like, oi, snap out of that shit. Yeah, I hear you. I've felt your pain before. I've been as angry as you. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you want to put a hand through a wall, or you want to, you know, yell at the sky and all that stuff. I get it, bro. I've been there too. But hear me out. Like, you know, this is what you need to do to get there. You know, to become, you know, to heal yourself. And I feel like, even maybe not even a fatherly figure, but just an older brother kind of figure. You know. And I feel like that's the mahi you guys are doing there. So, I mean, you know, sorry, that was a bit of a monologue from me there. But, yeah, I just felt like as a man, it's so important for us to get coached and still get that tough love, but from a loving place, if that makes sense. You know, it's not like, oh, I don't feel good, and then, you know, Dad's like, oh, shut up, man, get over it. It's like, oh, I don't feel good. It's like, okay, well, what's wrong? You know, tell me what's wrong. And in a stern way, you know, tell me what's wrong. You know, sit down. Come on, let's have a kai. You know, go for a run. Let's go to the gym. Let's go punch a punching bag. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of sort of mixed messages for men out there. Like, I think you've touched on something when it's challenging for men to know where they stand.
Oh, yeah.
And there's almost like, as we were talking earlier, that sense of, on the one hand, they're asking, you know, remember they used to talk about that sensitive new age guy, you know, guy could talk about his feelings and all of that. But then when men do start to open up and talk about stuff, it's like, oh, hang on a minute. And so it's finding that right balance. Yeah, I liked one of the analogies earlier on that was made about, you know, I don't know if it was Batman, John Wayne, or these Lone Ranger sort of stoic figures. And I think probably even growing up, we've seen, the ideal, you know, masculine. But yeah, I think the real thing about being a man is being connected to one another, and a lot of the things I try and share with the men I deal with are a lot about being able to talk, open up, and that talking about stuff as a strength. Mentioned earlier one of the buzzwords around vulnerability, but being able to show up, talk about what's really going on, and even there's a bit of a risk in that. Brené Brown, she talks about you know, showing up with the fear of possible rejection or ridicule and things like that, but it's also a place of where healing is and connection, and where she says dreams are born. So yeah, that's my advice to men, is to, you know, open up and talk about what's real for them, share their story. Amazing, a lot of men in that space, in terms of the gangs and stuff, are starting to open up and talk about stuff. It's been a slow journey, but it's amazing stories that are coming out of there, and the strength that's coming from that space. It's something I'm particularly interested in. Yeah, because a lot of those guys, particularly around corrections and all of that stuff, yeah, you know, the guys in our prisons are filled with people that have trauma.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a big work ahead of us, but yeah.
Yeah, te toka what you're saying there, John. I mean, we know, I think it's around about 80% of the prison population are Māori, and then the percentage of those, I mean, we say at Better Blokes 1 in 6 males would have been abused. It's that high.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the prison population, I don't know the numbers exactly for the prison population, but having done some work in bail houses the last year and a half myself, I'd say at least half of the guys that came through the program I was helping with, talked about being abused. So not only is the high percentage of Māori within jails, there's a high percentage of those guys within jail, and corrections as a whole have got trauma in their background.
Yeah.
And so, there's a huge amount of work to do there. I was just saying again before we went to record, went to air tonight.
A lot was said off air, sorry. We're getting there.
That I actually went to Henderson Police Station earlier on today to talk with some of the people there about specific cases coming through. And sure, the police got involved in all of those cases. Most of those cases were involved around family violence, but I had the privilege today of being able to look inside some of those cases, look at the notes briefly, and in most, if not all of those cases, there was mental health issues going on prior, there was drugs and alcohol going on at the same time, and in some of those cases there was trauma underneath all of that.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this stuff? We're talking about this stuff now.
Yeah.
It
comes in the form of statistics, right? It's percentages. It's not a deep conversation. It's just like this amount of people were this and this amount of people were that.
And so it's great to have a space like this to be able to begin to talk about these things. I think about, the Me Too movement with women, which is great. Women get hurt. They should not be getting hurt.
Yeah.
But men get hurt too, and it's okay to start talking about those things.
People hurt people.
Yeah, like, just to add to that, because, when we've got men who are empowered, probably for want of a better word, but who are healing, they're also sons, fathers, brothers, husbands, and so, it has a big flow-on effect to everyone else, including the women around them as well. So, that's our journey. In terms of Better Blokes, being a better husband, father, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, the whole community, the whole whānau, indeed. Yeah.
And getting the help that you need in order to heal, you start to discover that. I think myself personally, I still got a little bit of work, but also I feel healed. I feel like I'm in the right path in life, but not only have I, since I've felt a lot more healed, I've also felt like I love myself a lot more. And because I love myself a lot more, I love everyone in my life so much more. I only have one daughter, but I love her. So I always loved her, you know what I mean? Like, without fail, I always loved her. But I feel like I just love her so much more because I've allowed to, I love myself, and because I love myself, I can channel that out, and I've opened myself up to, that level of aroha, and my daughter sees it, and she ain't getting any younger. She's not a baby anymore. She's 6 now, so she's starting to notice things in Papa, and she's like, I remember you used to be like this, Papa, but you're not like that much. You're not as grumpy anymore or anything. And I'm just like, no, I started to realise, because I'm just part-time, mate. My daughter's not living in Auckland, and every moment I have to spend with her, I just want her to be happy. That's all I want. I just want her to be happy. And when she's not happy, I just totally sit down and just go, darling, when you're ready, share with me, because, I'm
that's
here for
awesome.
you,
I
my baby.
love that story.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the men, they come, and they're being fathers is a big motivation for them to address stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just hearing what you're saying about compassion. That comes up a lot. Growing up, as a child, we sort of tend to take on things. So, for example, there's a saying, when the parent is bad to the child doesn't learn to hate the parent, they hate themselves.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the men are growing up with these feelings towards themselves, inadequacy, guilt, disappointment. And so, yeah, I think part of that inner journey is finding that compassion, and that comes down to a lot of men just being able to share, hey, what happened for you? What was it like growing up? And they're talking about it, and the empathy comes. And I think as that compassion is developed, yeah, that's a real healing space. Yeah, so thanks.
Oh, wow, yeah. You guys are definitely teaching me something tonight, I'll tell you that. I'm really glad that I've reached out to you guys. I don't know if we've gone over this yet, but I mean, your journey was through drug addiction, and what led you to kind of what is it in your life that took you down that path of, was it just drugs and alcohol? Like, not that it mattered, but you were substance abuse essentially. What led you to that? That lifestyle. You don't have to share everything, but just generally.
Yeah, so I was on drugs for a number of years, and then I sort of started to cut down that, and then started drinking quite heavily, which was pretty messy.
I know that one.
Part of my journey. Yeah, I think just growing up, I grew up in a home where there was drug use. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. And for example, we moved around a lot when I was with my mum at a young age. And so I sort of attribute this sense of sort of never really fitting in or belonging anywhere. And so I sort of have carried that around with me, and I guess part of it was like, that connection, sitting around, and hey, all of that sort of thing, and escape at the same time. Jeez. And yeah, so, and often, there's a lot of aggression in my home, so, there's violence and all of that sort of stuff. And I sort of really sort of deteriorated, I think, over a number of years. And like what I like about what you're sharing is when my daughter came along, she's about to turn 8 next week. Yeah, I think was a real turning point for me, not wanting her to have the same life that I did.
Yeah. It's always the kids, isn't it? And might I say, it's probably, it hits us even more when it's daughters. I mean, I've only got one in yet, daughter, but yeah, there was definitely something that changed in me. Even though I was still carrying a lot of bullshit from my past, knowing that I was going to have a daughter, a part of me was a bit more excited to have a daughter than a son, because I don't know, I felt like I would have been a bit of a hard ass if I had a son. Not as much a dickhead or hitting my son, but I don't know. I think at that point of time when I was having a kid, I needed to learn compassion and patience, and I mean, it took me a while to get there. It wasn't like she entered the world and then I was like all of those things. Like, I'm still getting there now, but the journey has become far more beautiful. And like, part of me still sad that that I don't live with her as well, but I have no regrets of anything that we get up to, like when we hang out and we're together and we. People talk about family, and it's like, I've got 5 kids and, mum, dad, and 12 brothers and that. Like, for me, I come from a very small family, I was raised by a solo mum, but dad and my stepmum lived elsewhere. and I've got 3 other brothers on mum's side, and on dad's side 2 sisters. My dad, it's only him and his sister. On mum's side, it's only her and her 2 brothers. Like very small families for those generation. From that generation, I was like, geez, I come from just really small families, and that's, for me, it's beautiful because I feel like personally that's all I need. Yeah, in my life, and you know, I hope I made sense there. I think I started rambling. I'm learning to control that habit too of rambling, but.
No, I hear. I think just making those moments meaningful, the time that you have.
Hard out.
Yeah.
Hard out. Hey, it's a bugger because, yeah, we are running a bit over time, and probably a bit of that's due to my rambling.
You've done well, Fred. You've done so well.
But maybe it was like you guys came here for me to share, and maybe for me to do a little bit of healing just from having you guys here. And I hope maybe you found a little bit of healing in being able to share, bits about your journey and your mahi and everything that you guys do. But yeah, literally from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Simon and John, for coming onto the show. Is there anything you guys, Simon, you'd like to say?
I suppose, again, thank you so much for having us here. Really appreciated it. Yeah, and I would just want to say to the guys or people that are listening, if you want some help, if you want to talk about some stuff from your past, please reach out. Please do it.
Yeah. Just on the barrel, if you can share details.
Yeah, so you can get us on Facebook. You can get us on the website betterblokes.org.nz. And we've got an 0800 number too. I think it's 0800 448 484. I think that's the way it goes, but check it up on the website. And yeah, sharing your story can help. It can make you feel a little bit lighter, help you feel a little bit better about yourself. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Simon, John. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Well, that's episode 2. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us in this episode, and Simon and John, it was really wonderful having you guys on for a beautiful kōrero. Wow, I feel so.
Kia ora.
Oh, you guys really brought the mana. So yeah, choice.
Cheers, man.
All right, everyone, stay awesome. Peace out.